Welcome to Central News. I'm Hilary Entwistle. In today's news, international business guide and review site Yelp has been launched in New Zealand. Yelp, originally launched in San Francisco, will allow New Zealand businesses to update information and for the customer to review the business online. Vice President of Yelp, Miriam Warren, says the New Zealand tourism industry and smaller businesses will benefit.
I think they'll really enjoy being able to find fantastic places just around the block that they didn't know existed before, whether that's a great hair salon, a fantastic shoe cobbler, a wonderful milk and cookie bar, or even just a fantastic pizza joint.
Irradiated Australian tomatoes and capsicums coming into New Zealand should be clearly labelled, says Tomatoes New Zealand. Tomatoes New Zealand, the body representing more than 150 commercial fresh tomato growers, is urging Food Safety Minister Nikki Kaye to ensure that labelling of loose irradiated produce is carried out. From June this year, irradiated Australian tomatoes and capsicums could be available in New Zealand retail outlets, cafes and restaurants. The Minister for Food Safety is due to make her decision on the Food Standards Australia-New Zealand proposal this month. The Australia state of Queensland irradiates fresh produce before it is exported to prevent any bacteria or pests such as the Queensland fruit fly from leaving Australia's shores. The irradiation process uses electrical beams or X-rays or gamma rays, which are generated from the radioactive source cobalt-60. The processes are most likely to be used on tomatoes and capsicums coming to New Zealand from June. Now for our region's weather. Hamilton, your Wednesday will be sunny with a few light winds. Your expected high is 17 and an overnight low of a very chilly 5. Tauranga, your Wednesday, the same, sunny with light winds. Your expected high is 17 and an overnight low of 9. Just ahead, problem gambling in women. Welcome to Central News on TV Central. The same amount of men and women are experiencing problem gambling now, according to the Problem Gambling Foundation. I caught up with Cheryl Smith to find out some of the ways women are affected by problem gambling.
Women are affected in so many ways, Hilary. It's really interesting because we have so many roles in life, I guess, too. So women can be gamblers themselves. They can be affected by a partner who's gambling. Often women now are looking after kids as well as older parents. And so sometimes it's their parent that they're concerned about. Whether it's that they're doing the gambling themselves or they've got someone in their lives, it's often women that are sort of joining the dots on that, I suppose.
What proportion of gamblers are women?
Well, it's interesting because before we had pokie machines, the percentage of women with problematic gambling was actually quite low. It was only a few percent, I think, and the majority was men because it was TAB and sports betting and that sort of thing. Now we've got two main areas that women are gambling in. Pokies is big for everybody now. It's at least 70% of our work because of the high risk of addiction. But we've also got technology now with online gambling, and so that's more accessible as well. And it's close to 50-50 now between women and men in gambling. So that's how much pokie gambling in particular has influenced women's gambling.
What are some of the most common reasons that women gamble?
Yeah, often, because they're using pokie machines and online sort of gaming, switching into gambling mostly, it's often a way to escape, have a little bit of time out. Just get away from daily pressures, especially if they're caregiving a lot or they have become not used to doing anything for themselves. And they're always looking for something quite sort of quick. I can just take a few minutes out, a little break. Sometimes not realising that they're going to get caught in a little bit of a cycle with that, and they might lose more time once they lose their choice and get addicted. But I think the idea in the beginning is they'll have a bit of a break. And also pokie venues tend to be sort of, like a quiet area where people feel comfortable. Women going out on their own are less likely to maybe sit at a bar just by themselves, or if they're waiting for friends, they're more likely to feel comfortable just going into the pokie bar, sitting at a machine, and kind of thinking that they're out socially, but really they're on their own in quite an isolated activity. And
what would be your suggestion to actually find a better way for time out or stress relief?
Yeah, I think it's a really good idea to think about that, because sometimes women have forgotten what they used to do that they really enjoyed before they had maybe so many commitments in their life. And sometimes it's kind of a variety of things, I think, replaces that kind of escape with what they're doing with pokies. So particularly doing physical stuff is good, you know, whether it appeals to go to the gym or go for a walk. Doing social things, so they're spending more time with their friends and having a laugh and getting that kind of good chemistry going. And also something that's creative that involves them. So a lot of women do needlework now, those kinds of things, but it's got to be something that appeals, you know, to the particular woman that's looking for the other way of doing it.
In what way is a woman affected by someone else's gambling?
Yeah, that's huge, because often women are partners of somebody who's got a gambling problem. And so similarly the other way around, when it's a woman gambling and she has a partner, that person is feeling like, gosh, you know, there's been a betrayal of trust really, because they didn't know where that person was, they didn't know where the money was going, and they've been spending time away. Then once they've become distracted, they are not really present with their partner and their family either. So the partner experiences lots of that kind of disjointed, like something's not right here and things don't add up. And as I say, when it's women, they're sort of noticing that they're missing the relationship with a person.
What can women as partners do?
Yeah, I think it depends on the personal relationship that they have with their partner. Sometimes they can sit down and have a conversation and say, look, there's something bothering me. I've noticed that things aren't just as they used to be, and raise that kind of topic. Sometimes it's a bit more tricky than that if they've got somebody who's very stuck in their addiction and isn't really listening. And so I think one of the good things that people can do in general, and women particularly, is ring us. You know, have a conversation with somebody like me or one of the other counsellors across the country, because we can look at their particular circumstance with them and see what they feel comfortable doing. And that way they can raise it in a way that they're happier with, you know, feeling like they've got some backup and support as well.
And what can women as parents do?
Yeah, I think it's really important to notice what your young people are up to, and it may be that they're spending quite a lot of time on computers in particular, because say for example pokies is R18 in the pubs, the casino's 20 to enter, so it's about probably more access at home with their friends. Are they gaming? Are they gambling? Not buying scratchies for kids when they're younger, because it gives them that sort of chemistry, starts that sort of chemistry off that tells them that it's an exciting thing to do, and unfortunately that can lead to problematic gambling later. And I think always keeping the relationship going, keeping the communication going if you're worried about somebody maybe spending too much time online.
What about when it's her parents that she's actually worried about?
Yeah, there's actually quite a lot of women that call us to say that they've got somebody. Often actually it's another woman, like it's their mother, because women are outliving men still at the moment, and so sometimes it's older women when they've lost their husband and they're wanting to again be sort of social and be out, finding something to do for themselves, but they're getting in real trouble with particularly poker gambling, and losing lots of money. So yeah, it's about talking with us, finding out a good strategy, whether that sometimes they want to host a family meeting, sometimes they want to just talk with their mother on their own, sometimes their mother will say, you know, yes, I'm actually struggling a bit, and someone can help them put some safety in place with their finances and that sort of thing.
And what are those signs that we should be looking for that there may be problem gambling?
Yeah, with problem gambling, it's all the kinds of signs of stress, of being preoccupied by something, not being so relational with others, and missing money and things like that, and not knowing where people are, or finding out they're in a different place when they said they were somewhere else. Just joining those dots and thinking, well, hey, what is going on here? And it could be a problem with gambling.
If you or anyone you know is having a problem with any form of gambling, you can confidentially free phone 0800 664 262 or visit pgfnz.co.nz. Coming up next, Mia Ross-Patterson. Welcome back. Tonight we talk with Mia Ross-Patterson of the Western Bay District Council to find out what he thinks are the responsibilities of his council and his thoughts on the new purpose statement. The new policy statement is providing good quality local infrastructure, public services and regulatory functions at the least possible cost to households and businesses. Do you think, will this make actually a difference to how you govern?
Well, in the past, we've been very strong in infrastructure development and the public service regulatory part, so it's not very different to what we've done in the past. The wellbeings part has been taken out. That's environmental, economic, social and cultural. But I understand that we still have that responsibilities talking to MPs. So even though it's not there in the terms of reference, those areas can still be acted on. It is going to be interesting to see how we move through the processes on that, though, should we be taken to judicial challenge by a community or an individual. So that's another area we still have got to get an understanding of as we go forward.
Do you think councils should have caps on their spending enforced by central government?
I think it's, so long as it's reasonable, yes, I would say to that. And I would think that should you have a big project or an abnormal project, then you must have processes that you can work through to take that to your communities and your ratepayers, get an understanding and get them to sign off yes or no.
Under the new reform, councils will be required to disclose in their annual reports information on the number of staff employed. How will this affect the Western Bay Council, and do you think you'll be asked to make staff changes?
We already do it. In our annual report, we put out bands of our total numbers and what areas they are being paid. So I believe we're well down the track on that request.
The Local Government Auckland Council Act 2009 mayoral powers in respecting of appointing deputy mayors, establishing committees, appointing committee chairpersons and proposing plans and budgets will be extended to all mayors from October 2013. Will this actually give you more power than you already have?
Final say still remains with the council. They can, if they do not like any of the recommendations I bring forward in those areas, say no and vote them out. So even though it's down the lines of the Auckland Council, the rest of the council, the local bodies in this country are slightly different, where the committees can and the councils can take that power away.
Do you think that a council chief executive should be voted in?
No, definitely not. That's a responsibility of the directors of the company, which are the councillors. That's how I see it. They've got the responsibility. They've got to work with that person, so they need to be in control of that.
And council board members?
I would believe to get the effective board members that you need, I think majority should be appointed. There could be an area of vote to bring on those that the community has confidence in and have an understanding for, but there are some other areas I think council should make the decisions on that.
Do you think a council's liability should lie with central government or with their ratepayers, or a balance of both?
It depends. A lot of the areas that we've done infrastructure work on, wastewater and water, were because of government legislation. We were polluting estuaries and harbours, and we had a low-grade water supply. So they said, yeah, you've got to improve. There's no problem with that. I think that's a good direction. But should that cost be fairly strong or high, then I think central government should have a role to help there. Otherwise, I think the liability should lie with the council.
What about performance-wise? Where do you think the liability should be?
I think councils need to have good structures in place that they can get their performance out of both their councillors and their chief executive and their senior managers. I think that's their responsibility. That's what they're there for.
And they should be answering to their ratepayers rather than central government?
Oh, definitely, yes. Local government is about local communities. It's not about bigger and better and central government.
What change of the local government reform bill do you think will actually affect the Western Bay District Council the most?
I don't think it's going to affect us too much. I think there's a more process that's going to be put on us, and that we will be going back to our communities more we have done in the past. I don't see that as a bad thing. I think that's the way local government's going now. When you look at better local government through other parts of the world, that's the way it's going. It's working with your communities and your ratepayers, getting an understanding with them and seeing if you can serve what they need. That's where I think the future is.
Should councillors and council staff be held more accountable if a decision made by council has resulted in public loss?
I think it's a very good question, because there is two sides to that question. Councils can also make good decisions on, say, strategic land purchases. that when the times of rezoning comes, or development of sports fields or libraries or town centres, can really stand to good stead and shows considerable savings because they've made good decisions in an early stage. So there is two sides to that, but I believe the way we are at the moment is where we should be. If councils make mistakes, that can happen, but at the same time there should be credit given for when they make good decisions as well.
Tomorrow night we have the Waipa District Mayor Alan Livingston. Just ahead, Sue Moroney with the latest on the paid parental leave bill. If you have just joined us, welcome to Central News. The National Government have said they will enforce a veto on the paid parental leave bill if it passes, as there is not the budget to fund the bill. Sue Moroney is now with us to discuss the latest. Welcome to the program, Sue. So what is the latest from the National Government?
Well, I hear that the Prime Minister's saying that he's still wanting to put the financial veto on it. But look, I was encouraged because it seemed to me that their stance is softening a little, and I'll take any softening of a stance as a positive opportunity for making progress on extending paid parental leave for families who so desperately need it. John Key has said that he thinks that paid parental leave will be extended one day. I'm thinking that he meant by that when Labor gets into government it's going to be extended, but I hope that that we can actually have some negotiations beforehand and get that happening sooner.
How much will your bill actually cost the country every year?
Well, we're still doing work on Select Committee on getting agreement on what the official figures are, because people may recall that there's a dispute on what the figures are. The National Government says that it's going to cost $500 million over 3 to 4 years. The officials have said that over the next 3 years the cost will be as low as $166 million over 3 years. So there's quite a discrepancy in those figures. The Select Committee's working on getting some agreement amongst the parties on what the official figures actually are, including doing for the first time some costings on the immediate savings that are to be had from extending paid parental leave to 6 months.
How is there immediate savings?
Well, for example, if baby's at home with mum or dad instead of being at an early childhood education centre subsidised by the taxpayer, then there's immediate saving to the taxpayer because we're not paying for the subsidy for the child to be cared for. Other people, we're instead paying extended paid parental leave to mum or dad to be at home with baby, and all the research and evidence tells us that if we get those particular attachments and relationships right, then that's going to be best for baby in the long term.
How far behind are we compared to other OECD countries when it comes to parental leave?
Oh, look, we've found ourselves, I think, in the really embarrassing situation of being second to last in the developed world on this issue. So at 14 weeks paid parental leave at the moment, we're only just above the United States, and that's because they have 0 weeks of paid parental leave. Australia used to be below us, but they have leapfrogged us in the last 2 years. They now have 18 weeks paid parental leave. Much of the UK and Europe have around about a year's paid parental leave. So yeah, we've got some ground to make up.
And do you think companies, because the point was made that maybe companies will hire men over women because of the parental leave, do you think that actually has any leg to stand on that?
Look, the evidence is quite the opposite. In fact, since we introduced paid parental leave into this country in the year 2002, female participation in the workforce has gone up. So we can look at our own experience. We don't have to guess about this. We can actually have a look to see what happened in New Zealand at the time that paid parental leave was introduced, and it just bears no weight because, obviously women are a really very and increasingly important part of the New Zealand workforce, and participation of females has continued to climb through the introduction of paid parental leave. So look, I think that people who come up with that reasoning really are grasping at straws.
According to research, what is the most ideal time for that bonding?
Well, the World Health Organisation says that 6 months of exclusive breastfeeding is best, and so that's why in my bill I've proposed 6 months paid parental leave. The Families Commissioner has said that they would want to see paid parental leave extended to 12 months because there is a lot of research and evidence that suggests that is the optimum period of time. In fact, in the Labor Party we agree with that. Our policy is actually to extend paid parental leave to 12 months over time, but we just know that that's not realistic right now, but we do believe it's realistic right right now to be able to get that staged implementation 3 to 6 months.
Do you think that the money that will be spent on paid parental leave will actually outweigh the money that's spent on childcare subsidy?
Not completely, but that's just a very short-term saving. There's also the fact that if women are vacating their job for 6 months and more, then the employer is much more likely to replace them with someone who's perhaps on the unemployment benefit now. So there's another immediate saving. So there's a range of ways, a range of savings that are being costed by the Select Committee at the moment. We're focusing on just the immediate cost savings. If we're really going to do a very comprehensive job on this, we would look to the long-term savings as well. We know that there will be long-term savings in hospital admissions, long-term savings to the taxpayer in terms of remedial education, and even we get to actually have less money being spent on our justice system and our prisons if we get this right. So the long-term savings really mean that we move into positive territory in terms of the spend and the investment in those early months.
And what have been some of the submissions made to the Select Committee?
Oh, look, they've been very, very powerful because there's been a mix of large organisations like Plunkett and Barnardo's and 26 for Babies Coalition coming forward with all the research and evidence, which is huge around this area, and then individual families coming forward and telling their stories, and that's been incredibly powerful. In fact, I can recall a day of submissions in Auckland not that long ago where there was not often a dry eye in the room when women were telling stories. The one that sticks in my mind was a woman who came to the Select Committee to talk about having given birth to twins, and through financial circumstances having to go back to work when they were 5 months old. And she lasted 6 weeks in her job. She described to us what her day looked like, and it was horrific. She was getting on trains to go and breastfeed these babies. She was not getting any sleep at night because when one was asleep, the other one was awake feeding, and then she was trying to go back into her paid employment. After 6 weeks, she resigned from her job. What she said to the Select Committee was that if she'd had another 12 weeks up her sleeve, where she had that support to be able to spend time with those twins, she firmly believed that when she went back to work another 3 months later, when they were 8 months old, she would have been able to have coped and she would have kept her job. She sat there and told us that the twins were now 3 years old. She still wasn't back in the paid workforce, even though she really very much wanted to be, because she'd lost that link and that connection with her job at that time. So it's been very powerful.
Thank you, Sue. That is the news for today. We really want you to be involved, so like us on Facebook and let us know your views. If you have news including your own video and photos, go to our website and hit upload. Amy will be here tomorrow night with more guests from in and around the regions. I'm Hilary Entwistle. Have a lovely evening.
This has been an Alpha Media production, a division of Television Media Group.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.